Okay,
Welcome, everybody.
so should I kick off?
Yeah, just a moment. I'm
Sorry,
going to
Karim,
do
just go
the
ahead.
intro and then we can proceed. So, welcome, everybody. Today, we're going to be talking about introduction to digital forensics. Our mentors today is going to be Esther and Raymond. Those are our mentors, very experienced within this space. So, you guys are in good hands. You don't have to worry about anything and ask as much questions as you can after the presentation. So please just write all the questions you guys have and then ask them towards the end, not in between while they're explaining their sessions and giving a recap of what they had taught. So Raymond, if you allow me, let's just start with Esther, if that's okay with you. As they say, ladies first.
No, Karim, he can
Yeah,
start.
that's okay.
He can start.
All right, so Karim, is that in order?
Yeah, so let's just give Esther the go ahead, and then we'll give her 10 minutes, and then you'll cover up later after her your session for 10 minutes, and then we'll do the Q&A.
Okay, cool.
Okay, cool. So Esther, the floor is yours, and all the best.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hello, Raymond. Karim, I don't know if you know that Raymond is a mentor.
Okay.
So how do you tell my boss to go before? How do you tell my boss to go after me?
As they say, ladies first. We are
We
honoring
we
you, ladies.
we lead from the back.
I
Okay.
mean,
Okay. So thank you so much, gentlemen. My name is Esther Adwets. I'm a cybersecurity analyst. I did the course on digital forensics. And just to take you through quickly what you will learn in that course, just an introduction to digital forensics first. What is digital forensics and the goals for it? Why do we need digital forensics, or why is it becoming more important? Why are we shifting from the usual forensics of just investigation, an investigation? There's been someone has died, there's a homicide, and an investigation needs to happen. This right now we see wide use of technology, and that means cyber criminals are also using technology to commit crimes. So we talk about, to what end? So, digital forensics to what end? Other than that, we move to applications of digital forensics. So if you're scared of you don't want to do criminal investigations, then don't worry. You can still have digital forensics in other fields. We go through the applications of digital forensics in corporate investigations, in incidents response, and then again, you don't have to do some police work, quote unquote, police work in forensics. So you could still do corporate for investigations. You could still do incidents response and cybersecurity, and you could still help other people recover lost data, deleted or damaged data. The other thing we talk about is the other application that we briefly go through is insurance and financial fraud investigations. Also national security and intelligence. And I want to assure you that Raymond is very good at the previous one. It's very good at insurance and financial fraud investigation. And then the other thing that we talk about in the course is we go through forensic tools. And then in here, there's so many tools. Yeah, there's so many cybersecurity in general tools. And we also have specific forensic tools. Under forensic tools, we discuss that we divide them. So actually, for you to help you understand, I divided them into four categories. So tools in evidence collection and analysis, and then tools in data analysis, tools in data recovery, and then there are also the multi-purpose forensic tools. The reason why this is divided is to help you go through the entire process of forensics, because digital forensics, you're not just going to, you have to start from somewhere. There's a process. If you have a forensics project, there's a process to it. There's more like you'll have a project, and a project needs, like a system to help you start from the beginning, and then up to when you do the actual forensics, the actual meat, and then up to the end. Away from the tools, we have one crime scene, one at least one investigation to help you put all of these things that you've learned together. I mean, you know the steps of, you know all the tools, you know all the steps, but here you've been called to a crime scene. How do you go about it? So we briefly go on about there's a case that we dissect. We go through how to go about it, the first step, the second step, the third, up to the last step, actually, to help you understand the chain of custody, how you're supposed to go about it, to help you put together all of the things that we talked about when you begin the class, up to the last thing. Just put it together so that you're also not lost. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's not a very long session. It's divided into different videos. Although I understand Karim put them all together. Hello, Karim. Did you put them all
Yes,
together into one video?
yes, I did.
Ah, okay. But you'll notice the breakage, like it's from one lesson to another, so that it's easy for you to understand and it's easy for you to focus and follow through. Yeah, that's pretty much the overview of the class or the session. If you have any questions, I'm open to them. The floor is open.
Thank you very much, Esther, for a brief summary of what you just had covered within your session. So let's have my brother Raymond here to take over. So, Raymond, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Karim. I think for me, I will start by sharing uh, the same PowerPoint that I shared earlier, just for a structured review. So
Yeah,
just one moment.
it's your class, so feel free to do whatever you want, even if you want to enable your video. That's awesome.
Uh, let's see. Actually, let's do that so that people can see who you're talking to. So
Just a disclaimer before you
yeah.
proceed, brother. I want them not to wonder why on your screen is showing Kareem. He's using my credentials. So,
Aha, I had not even seen that. So
yeah.
my name is Raymond, not Karim. Let me do this.
Hi, everyone, and
Oh,
welcome.
sorry. I guess we'll have to. Okay. You have to keep it just like a small screen. Anyway, so basically, I think we went through some of the objectives we had. Essentially, the goal for me was to try and help you understand what digital forensics is and the kind of the steps that we follow, help you understand the forensic investigations that we typically ask ourselves as we are running an investigation, the various have a various understanding of the types of crimes that we investigate and some of the challenges that you might face as an investigator, right? So we said that digital forensics it's essentially a science. So you're looking at preserving, acquiring, analyzing, and documenting evidence from electronic devices. So your phones, laptops, and many others. We also looked at some of the subsets of digital forensics, which kind of comes from uh, uh, the different types of devices we have, right? So computer forensics, these are like some of the common ones you might hear of. So computer forensics, mobile forensics, email forensics, network, cloud, memory forensics, and then the the lesser talked about, I would say, IoT forensics, because it's still a growing field, same as vehicle forensics, and maybe not so much audiovisual forensics. That one has been going on for some time. So these are just some of the areas. And when you're looking at real world cases, so these cases that I gave examples of are drawn from the Kenya Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act. Right, so you have things like unauthorized access, which many of us might know as hacking, unauthorized interference. An example is distributed denial of service, interception, where you have things like man-in-the-middle attacks, unauthorized credential disclosure. You have phishing, which is very common, identity theft and impersonation, interception of money transfers, publication of false information. So this is where you'll hear of things like defamation suits and the like. We've been seeing a lot of this recently, actually, like with the case with Albert Ojwang and what have you. And computer fraud is also a very big one. So generally, when you're running an investigation, you will have to ask yourself questions. We summarize those questions as 5 Ws and 1 H. And basically, you think about, who did the crime, when did it happen, what exactly happened, why did they do it, how did they do it? Those are some of the questions you might be asking yourself as you're running your analysis. And as you're running the investigation, these are the general steps you might go through. And just to note, the steps are it's not necessarily like a hard structure, like especially as you get towards the middle, because you're supposed to, for example, like be doing documentation throughout. But as a general flow of the investigation, you'll first of all identify evidence. So let's say you're called to a crime scene. And you're running a case that has to do with fraud, you have to understand, first of all, like what are some of the places you're going to get evidence, right? Maybe it's a laptop, maybe it's a phone. So that's the evidence identification phase. Then you have to preserve that evidence, right? And we look at some of the methods we can use for that. After that, you'll do forensic acquisition, which generally means you're making copies of the evidence. You never work with the original. Then you're going to analyze what you've copied, right? To try and actually now find evidence in a forensically sound manner. And after that, you're going to present your findings to whatever stakeholders you're working with, whether it's the corporate environment, whether it's the police, like whether it's a lawyer. You're going to be presenting your findings to them in a clear manner that they can understand, because I find that a lot of times technical people forget that when you're communicating with non-technical people, you have to say things very simply, like in a way that they can understand. So you have to keep that in mind when you're doing your reporting. So some evidence sources we looked at, of course, as we've mentioned, just as an overview: computers, removable media like flash drives, hard drives. You have mobile devices as well, so your smartphones and the like. IoT devices, so think about IP cameras, printers, TVs, smart wearable devices like your fitness trackers, gaming consoles these days, like your PlayStations, connect to the internet, so they become sources of evidence as well. You have cloud services and you have GPS systems. So GPS systems, especially, that's where you'll find a lot of the vehicle forensics coming into play. And when you're talking about preserving evidence, of course, criminals will try to cover their tracks. No one ever commits a crime and wants to get caught. So your job is to reconstruct past events and make sure that evidence is not destroyed or corrupted, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Some of the methods you would be following to preserve evidence include documenting chain of custody, which Esther has mentioned. You're supposed to take pictures whenever possible. So let's say you've taken a laptop from a scene. Try and take pictures of it, of serial numbers, the where exactly you've taken it from, showing photos that show the condition. This is very important as well. You block electromagnetic frequency signals. Uh, these are things like Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, etc. You minimize activity on the device. So basically, if it's powered on, you don't go trying to look through things and open documents. Like, that's not the time to do that, because you're going to be changing evidence. Maintain state. which means if it's on, leave it on, unless there's an extraneous circumstance where you're seeing evidence being destroyed. And if it's off, don't turn it on. Then you're also supposed to ensure your evidence is secured properly. So if it's like locked away in a safe, for example, that's kind of like goes hand in hand with documenting your chain of custody. So anytime the evidence moves, you need to record that. You need to record why it has moved, who took it, just to make sure that whatever findings you come up with are admissible in court. So we've talked about acquisition now, and just to note, we're doing this because, like I mentioned earlier, we never work with the original evidence, because if you do that, you're going to be risking changing evidence, which would make your evidence not admissible in court. And that's a very big, it's a very big thing to keep in mind. These are some of the concepts I typically talk about that you should keep in mind when you're doing your acquisition. So you have static versus live forensics. Static meaning that you're possibly doing the forensic imaging when the device is off. Let's say it's a laptop, it's turned off. Maybe you're taking like a physical copy of the hard drive. I don't know if some of you have heard about hard drive duplicators. So the device is basically off, as opposed to live forensics where you're acquiring evidence from a device that is powered on. You're also supposed to think about the order of volatility. Again, this will be very dependent on the type of case you're running. If you're doing incident response, for example, which again, Esther has mentioned, you're supposed to focus a lot on volatile evidence first. Well, volatile evidence meaning this is evidence that can be lost very quickly. So think about, for example, evidence that is resident in RAM that will basically disappear if you turn the device off. Once power stops cycling through the device, you lose that evidence. So you're supposed to take that first as you move towards the less volatile evidence, for example, that one that is in hard drives. You're also going to think about the right tools that you would need for the job. Esther has mentioned, I don't know if Esther mentioned some tools, but like the tools that you select are very important. Sometimes certain tools will work for certain jobs and others might not. For example, if you're trying to acquire memory, you know the right tools to use for that. For example, FTK Imager is one that you can use on Windows systems to collect memory and registry. So we've gone through this we've all had an overview of those concepts, order of volatility as well, and tool collection. So I'm sure you guys, in case there are any questions on that, you can just ask. When you're doing and just to jump to analysis now, these are some of the things I would do as an investigator when I'm trying to answer those 6 questions: the who, what, when, where, why, and how. So you can always start by just like browsing the files from the device. You do your searches. You'll have keywords possibly that are related to the case you're running. You will parse, extract, and carve data. Sometimes you will have encrypted, you'll find encrypted files. Some you might be able to decrypt, others might be more challenging. So you'll also be possibly doing some decryption. You'll analyze file headers. And I put this here because you'll realize that sometimes, as we've said, criminals might try to cover their tracks. They'll try to hide. So if you can find, for example, a file that is actually an image but has been changed to look like it's a document, right? And as you keep finding evidence, you will bookmark and correlate them. So some tools will even give you the option, or rather the functionality to relate your findings across cases. Because if you think about, say you're called to investigate fraud and you have 5 suspects. So you can find a piece of evidence from one suspect's device that is related to another suspect's device in the same case. But if you're looking at them independently, you might not be able to correlate them. So some tools will make this easier for you. Anti-forensics is a big concern in investigations. So you'll have things like encryption, steganography, signature masking, which has to do with like the faking files, trying to hide the true nature of files, data saturation, malicious timestamps, and broken logs. There are many other methods that criminals might employ to try and slow you down as an investigator or try to basically keep you from finding out what they did. But these are just like some common ones. Then as we are talking about reporting, you'll always have to document your procedures and methodology, the tools you've used, and remember, because we've said you'll be talking to non-technical people most of the time, you have to put, usually you'll benefit from demonstrating to them using screenshots. You also have to put down your findings and conclusions. Essentially, this is just like talking about the pieces of evidence you found and the conclusions that you draw from those findings. Then, based on the findings and conclusions that you make, you'll make recommendations for the stakeholders. After that, which is sometimes you might be required to do expert testimony, other times not. It depends on how far the case is supposed to go. For example, if it gets to court, your client might require you to assist them with expert testimony. So basically, it's just becoming acting like a witness to explain technical concepts to non-technical people in support of the case. And I think that's it. Just as an overview, I hope I probably didn't take more than 10 minutes, but thank you.
Thank you very much, brother, for a very, let me say, insightful session. I might say even very well in depth, even though it was
Thank
short,
you.
but it was in depth. So thank you very much. Okay, so I think it's time for the Q&A, but also Isaac, yes, the slides will be shared. Also, Raymond's session will also be uploaded alongside this live session of Q&A. So you don't have to worry, all the sessions will be up right after we're done with this live session. You will probably have them live on YouTube. So you just have to go and, revisit, watch them, and learn from the two mentors who are actually mentees, which is great. But yeah, so anybody who has a question to ask our two mentors, either or, feel free, or you can just type in your question on the chat the way Mr. Isaac here did with his question. So feel free to do so. Otherwise, you can also raise up your hand and then we'll select you to ask your question to the mentors. So feel free to take it the way you want it to go. So anybody who has a question, this is your time. And by the way, let me just start. Let me be the first one to ask the first question. I think let me take this question to Raymond. So there is digital forensics. There is another role called incidents respond. If you can just give a short, let me say, differentiator between the two. Is it the same, let me say, role, or are they different
Yeah.
roles? And if they are, what are the differences between the two? Because let me just say, I'm assuming they're all in the same space of quote unquote blue teaming.
Okay.
So, yeah, can you just start from there?
All right. I'm going to let's see. The way I like to explain this is if you think actually just like thinking about let's even think about in the information security space as a whole, right?
Yeah.
If you think of it as a plane, right? Uh, and then take the example of a hacking case. So
Okay.
how I like to explain this, the differences here is you will have the hacking case as the incident,
Mm-hmm.
and you have events that happen before, so pre-incident, and then intra-incident, like when the incident is actually happening, and then
Yeah.
post-incident, right?
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about pre-incident, that's where you'll find all the things that are being done to prevent the incident. So you might find a lot of compliance activities,
Mm.
preemptive cybersecurity roles there. Um, then you move on to the point where now you have the incident now is happening. So as the incident is happening, you'll be thinking about now we are going more along the lines of incident response, right?
Mm.
So the incident is happening, like it's active, like you're responding to it.
Yeah.
So here you will be looking at a lot of, say, for example, people who are working in security operations centers, like your analysts,
Exactly.
um, the people who the people who generally sit and respond to the incident. It might not necessarily be someone who is sitting in a security operations center. It could be also just like a consultant being called to respond to the incident. But generally,
Yeah.
like with incident response, you're thinking about the incident happening at that particular point in time. Then,
Mm.
as you're moving more towards the end, the post-incident activities, the incident has already happened, right? Maybe you've already
Mm.
recovered, but like it's already happened. So this is where I typically place things like digital forensics. So digital
Mm.
forensics in itself, I think of it as more investigative than
Mm-hmm.
reactive. Like basically, you're investigating the activity, the incident after it has happened. So the
Mm.
two, just to answer your question better now, digital forensics and incident response kind of exist in the same space, and you'll hear
Okay.
things like DFIR because they're
Yeah.
together. So digital forensics and incident response, but they're a little
Yeah.
different. One of them is more, like ongoing, like
Yeah.
the incident is happening,
Mm.
you're responding to it at that particular point in time. Whereas the other one is more happens a little later. Like you're now coming back to investigate what actually happened. Like you're not responding, like you're investigating what happened. Because if you actually think about the incident response steps themselves, there's a
Yeah.
phase where like you look at you investigate like what happened, like in the post-incident activity. So
Mm.
digital forensics might play a little more in that field. I don't
Okay.
know.
Thank you.
I hope that covers your question.
E- Exactly.
Yeah.
Hi,
Also,
Karim.
hi. Who's
So
that?
just to
Sorry.
add,
Oh, Esther.
that's
Yeah.
me.
Okay.
Yes, yes. Just to add on it, just
Yeah.
to add on what the differences Ray has given.
Yeah.
It's you see for forensics, in the videos you learn that I said when forensics is about rewriting the steps of the attacker, you want to go backwards and see
Mm.
where did the rain start beating us.
Okay.
But then
Hmm.
incident response, the rain is beating you and you're getting that umbrella.
Mm.
Exactly.
You're getting that umbrella and you're fixing it that right at that time. You're trying to get your clothes outside. If your clothes are outside drying, you get them back to the house.
Mm.
But then now you start saying, okay, so if the clothes were rained on, why were the clothes rained on? Oh, the person who was in charge, Ray was away. Ray was out of the house. Ray
Mm.
was at place X. He was not there to bring the clothes inside. So that's maybe
Mm.
just think of just simply like that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Esther, for your um lovely explanation. And also Raymond, thank you for that. So I'm sure now there is no confusion between the two because I know it usually brings. That's why I asked that question. It usually
Yeah,
brings the confusion among the newbies. But
yeah,
also, can you also add into the mix the
yeah.
perspective of malware analysis? Where does that come in? Because I'm sure it's also within somewhere, either if it's the incident response or is it another particular line of specialization by itself without being
Mm.
involved in the digital forensic space. Yeah, so I'd like to get the both of you your opinions on that within the line of malware analysis, etc.
Okay. I would say when you're thinking about malware analysis, because this is not something that you'll be able to do on the fly as an incident is happening, possibly. Like you would have to still take a little more time to, you know, dissect the malware,
Yeah.
see what it's actually doing. So I would place it more along the lines of digital forensics, like
Okay.
the after the case fact.
Mm.
But at the same time, I think it's important to highlight that even within digital forensics and incident response, there are very highly specialized parts. And a good one is what you've just mentioned. So malware analysis can be a whole area on its own. And again, I think it's important to note that in this space, you can't specialize in everything. You'll burn out,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
So you will have people say looking at malware, just like that's like their thing. They
Mm.
specialize in malware analysis. You'll have
Yeah.
other people who are more along the GRC side, so governance, risk, compliance. These are the people who will be doing more of like the documentation things, trying to
Yeah.
help the organization, for example, ensure they have good incident response plans, disaster
Mm.
recovery plans, business continuity plans. You're basically
Yeah.
together called contingency planning, right?
Mm.
So, which are again specializations on their own.
Yeah.
But with the context of malware analysis, I would place it more along the lines of like investigation, so digital forensics,
Mhm.
but it's also a specialization on its own.
Okay, so it's gonna be more or less like let me say when we're talking about the people who love pen testing, or let me say the red teaming or offensive security, they're going to
Yeah.
have, let's say, web application pen test, network
Hmm.
pen test, etc., etc. So it's more in line with that. So it's
Yeah.
just a sub specialization within digital forensics.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, yeah, exactly. So thank you for that. Now, there's also another confusion which I tend to, see a lot of people have. So when we talk about digital forensics itself, sorry, this is my last question. So this is to the mentees. um, when we talk about digital forensics itself, you highlighted the different sub specializations rather
Yeah.
within digital forensics. So there's computer forensics, mobile forensics, IoT,
Yeah.
etc., etc. So what will be your advice for the mentees here today when it comes to digital forensics? Because um, yes, we understand there's the specialization bit, but there's also these other spaces which are going on parallel with one another. So like for example, computer forensics is going parallel with mobile forensics, and also putting into consideration that we are not in Europe where you
Mm.
can really specialize in one line of specialization. Like, for example, you stick to computer forensics itself and leave
Mm.
alone the other lines of specializations.
Mm.
So, what would be your advice to the mentees? Also, Esther, I'd like to get your word in this. The both of you, what will be your advices? So, yeah, let's start with you, brother.
All right. Thanks for that question. I would say when it comes to like the different areas of digital forensics, essentially because they're really mostly device-based because it really has to do with where you're getting the evidence, hence the computer, mobile, email, IoT, etc.
Yeah.
I would say you don't necessarily keep yourself constrained to one area. As an investigator, the thing that makes you a good investigator is, first of all, understanding where you can get evidence, right? Um, because you can't go into an investigation and you're only good at computer forensics, and
Mm,
the case you're being called to has mobile, has email, has IP cameras, and you don't know you can
mm,
get evidence from there. So you can very easily miss critical evidence if you don't know where to look, first of all, and how to
mm,
look through the evidence, and possibly what kind of evidence you can even get. So my what I would say to that is be curious. Technology continues to evolve exponentially. So your curiosity is very important in basically just be curious to learn. When you could possibly start off learning about forensics from the computer side or the mobile side or both, because those two are common. But if you're curious enough, having learned the procedures that are followed in forensics, you can transplant that to try and explore other areas of forensics as well. So play around with cameras. If you have let's say wireless cameras at home, or you have access to devices that are outside of the scope of the things you've learned, try and experiment with them, see how you can extract evidence from them. If you have a car, uh, try to play around the ODB port, like plug in a tool, try to extract, see what you can find there as evidence, and like how do you extract it in a forensically sound manner. So a lot of it really is just curiosity. Um, and you'll just like keep learning on the fly like that. I don't think it's practical to limit yourself as an investigator to one
mm.
particular area,
Okay.
and specialize in that. Just like at the very least, learn a little bit of everything. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Esther. What's your opinion on that?
Um, Ray has said Ray, whatever, I agree with everything that Ray has said. But most importantly, you need to set your goal. You need to know what do you want to be. You also need to know sometimes your strengths and your weaknesses, because you
Mhm.
cannot say that you do not enjoy deep coding work, reverse engineering, and then you get
Mhm.
to do malware analysis. It's you're lying to yourself.
Yeah.
So just ask yourself, what do you like to do? What are your strengths? Because some of us here do not have. I'm not saying that if you do not have coding knowledge, you might not survive in malware analysis. You would, if you
Mhm.
want to. I mean, everything is possible if you put out the if you go and if you get to work and focus on it, the many hours. If you put in the hours, you definitely get something out of it. Just write your goals down, know where you want to go,
Yeah.
and with these goals, again, align your goals with your strengths. Sometimes
Mm,
you love to write policies, and then you go to mobile forensics. Honestly, I mean, it doesn't make sense
Mhm.
at all. Yeah, so just ask yourselves,
Mhm.
do you love details? Do you love solving problems?
mm,
Then incident response would be very ideal for you, because it's going to be, now again, because you see, cybersecurity is always evolving. What you learn today will not necessarily be relevant tomorrow or next week. So you also want something that
exactly.
you're constantly curious, because your curiosity is what is going to make you stand out. Your curiosity
Yeah.
is what is going to make me want to hire you over
Mm,
Raymond, or it's going to differentiate the level of knowledge that you have. Yeah.
mm. Thank you very much. Now let's go to the mentees questions. We have one from Steve. So, Mr. Isaac, please just bear with me because I had asked a lot of questions initially, but we'll get to you after Steve's and Rachel's questions. So, Steve asked two questions. So, one, I'll throw it to Esther, and then the other one will be yours, Mr. Raymond. So, Esther, the question is, what are some of the legal and investigative consequences rather if the chain of custody is compromised?
Okay. Uh, every time you begin an investigation, even before you begin this course, I need you to understand that the goal for digital forensics, if you're going to investigate, if you're going to get into a crime scene and investigate something, the goal is to make this admissible in a court of law, right? So if this is supposed to be admissible in a court of law, you need to follow the process. If you, let's say there's a case, there's been a homicide, you go to the court and then you tell us you broke the chain of custody, okay? So on step 4, you say you do not know how this, say you're collecting browser evidence, or say browser evidence, then the machine that you're investigating, you did not store it correctly, so someone has remotely wiped it. What will you present in the court of law? And you are the expert in this case. You see, the court is going to say, okay, there's no evidence here, there's nothing. So even if the browser history showed that this person actually committed this crime, or this person, maybe the last thing you Googled was where to get weapon X, weapon Y, that would incriminate you, right? And if you're going to build a case, we need that. We say, okay, there was intention. This person premeditated this crime. So the one top implication of not following the chain of custody is that no one is going to trust your evidence. It's as good as nothing. All the work you would have done up to that point is as good as nothing. So you need to, it's the goal of which is to maintain the integrity of the evidence. But once there's no integrity, again, remember the 3 foundations of cybersecurity: confidentiality, integrity, availability. So number 1, you would have broken all of these foundations. All of these, the foundations of information security, you would have broken all of them. So we cannot use your evidence. And also, when evidence is corrupted, so when you fail to follow the chain of custody, evidence becomes corrupted. You have no results to present. This is a client. Assume a client has paid you millions of money to do this task for them. You have nothing to present. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Esther. So, to you, Raymond, your question is explain the importance of proper chain of custody for digital forensics.
Yeah, so essentially, this kind of will just echo what Esther has said, yeah? When you're running an investigation, one of the things you're required to do as part of the procedures you're performing is ensure that evidence has been handled properly, to ensure that integrity is, basically there's evidence integrity maintained throughout your investigation. A chain of custody is a very important part to do that. Basically, let's say, for example, you're called to an organization. There's a fraud case that has happened. Maybe someone has hacked into their systems. Whatever the case is, you've been called to investigate. You need to start. You need to, at the very beginning, start by documenting your chain of custody. Basically, let's think about, for instance, a computer, right? Maybe you're able to take it out of a scene as part of your seizure. You're going to have to document where, like, for example, things like the place where the evidence was seized, who it belonged to, who handed it over to you, the time, the date, who took it, why it was being taken as evidence. So, like, these are very important elements of the chain of custody. Then after that, like, some of the things you think about are, now, remember we talked about securing evidence and tracking movement. So as part of your chain of custody, one of the things that you also have to do is you record all the movement of that particular piece of evidence throughout your entire case, from the time you get it to the time you give it back to, let's say, maybe the suspect. Movement has to be recorded throughout. If you don't do this, now basically, if you fail to maintain a proper chain of custody, what you end up doing is risking the entire case, like right from the start, right? You've run a very good investigation. You've found damning evidence. The suspect has been caught dead to rights. They possibly would have been imprisoned, but now their lawyer comes and attacks you from a procedural point. You have holes right from the chain of custody. So basically, how can they trust whatever evidence you've presented if you can't demonstrate that you maintained the integrity of the evidence in the first place? So you see, it becomes a very big problem. You risk you risk breaking down the entire case by not maintaining a proper chain of custody. And I'll give you now a real example. I wouldn't say who, but there's a case I'm currently looking at now. And my goal as an investigator is to basically dismantle a report that has been done from a procedural standpoint. So one of the things that I saw is the the party that acquired evidence from the suspect essentially recorded a wrong serial number. So there's a laptop, the laptop has a serial number, there's a way we check serial numbers, but then they record the wrong serial number. And you see, like that becomes a problem, because if Ray comes in and finds that the serial number that has been recorded is not the actual device's serial number, then it brings into question, did they actually investigate the right device? Like what device did they have, right? So that again presents a problem, chain of custody issues, and that risks dismantling the entire case. It's good for my client, but as an investigator, you're supposed to pay attention to these things. Actually, one of the qualities you need to have as an investigator is attention to detail. Yeah.
Mm, thank you very much. So there's a question from Rachel, and she asked, "What do you do in case of anti-forensics technique used when doing your investigation?"
Mm.
This is a good question, though.
Yep.
I worked
Yeah.
actually on it was my master's thesis, which
Yeah.
I worked on. But yeah, you may proceed.
It is a very good question, a very big concern, nothing to be taken lightly. So basically, as we've said, criminals will leverage different types of methods to hide their activities and avoid getting caught. So in the case that you actually, let me double back. First of all, before you even understand what anti-forensic techniques have been used, or like what to look for, you need to, as an investigator, be able to think as a criminal. Again, like another
Mm,
important thing. Like if it were you, what are some of the things you would do to hide and cover your tracks? So with that understanding, you're able to try and, at the very least, as part of your processes, start checking or considering possible methods that may have been used to hide evidence by the suspect.
mm,
Maybe you find encryption has been used heavily. Maybe you find they've done the signature masking where they've tried to make a file look like another one. Maybe you find they've employed steganography to hide um, criminal evidence in an innocent looking file. Maybe they've hidden information in Slack space or unallocated space in the device,
mm,
and you haven't checked. You need to just kind of like first have an understanding. And if you get to that point where you find the possibility that these techniques have been employed, you you'll leverage the right techniques. You need to be able to understand what techniques to use to counter the anti-forensic techniques. So sometimes encryption is a big one, not always easy to beat. But for example, if encryption is the problem, one of the common uh, techniques used is to do, let's say, for example, password cracking. So there are specialized forensic tools and equipment that are actually made for password cracking jobs. Takes a very long time. Sometimes you also have to ask yourself, is it worth it? Like there are so many factors on the ground to consider before you. Because, for example, if you have 1,000 encrypted documents, you might not be able to crack all of them. These are very resource intensive jobs, They take a very long time, and you have to like make the right decisions as an investigator. So in cases where basically where I'm leading with this is sometimes you might not be able to counter everything, even though it's good to understand some of the methods that have been or that criminals can employ to hide. You may not be able to counter everything. In such a case, one of the things that is important again to do, remember in your report we said you have to document your procedures, the procedures you've performed as you're doing your investigation. If you come across some of those techniques that you might not have been able to counter, you have to document them. Say, for example, we found these encrypted documents, but we were not able uh, to crack them, for example. Or we found uh, pieces of evidence hidden in unallocated space, but they were fragmented and we were not able to basically piece all of them back together to show us what document it actually was. So just documentation is a big thing. If you come across anti-forensics, try to counter with different techniques available to you. In the case that you're not able to, you have to document that, like as part of your procedures as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Isaac, you can now unmute yourself and ask your question.
Raymond, before Isaac
Okay.
goes, I would like to add something on what Ray
Yeah.
has said. You see, the thing about, in as much as digital forensics is about investigating, you need a strategy. Remember, we talked about, Ray mentioned about prioritizing, you need to prioritize evidence. All evidence is not the same. That's another thing. You're going, when you're collecting your evidence or even when you're investigating, you're going to prioritize based on stock volatility, the potential value, and also the effort that is required to go through them. So for example, if you're going to do, when you get to a place, network data is very volatile. So it can disappear quickly, so you're going to prioritize that. And you also look at where you're going to get the most information. So we're talking about the potential value of the evidence that you have. So yes, prioritize, have a strategy. Think like the criminal. What would the criminal do? And you never underestimate the criminal. Never ever underestimate the criminal. You'd rather in your career as a forensics analyst, you'd rather overestimate and then outdo them than underestimate and then realize that you had some biases, and then you wanted to get you were not able to get to the desired outcome.
Hello.
Thank you.
Hello, Isaac. Yeah, ask your question.
Okay, thank you so much. By the way, I've shared on the chat, and let me read for you the question. It says like this, and my question says, I'm currently thinking of, I'm curiously thinking of where a case happened with intersection of digital forensics and incident response. As a cyber investigator, how can I develop an interactive cyber experience, a cybersecurity experience for conducting interviews, stop the attacks, solve puzzles, and restore things to normal? My question is just there, in the chat.
Okay, maybe I'll take this one. A good question, Isaac. It's very packed. What I can say to that is, remember we've talked about specialized areas, right? And you can actually even split digital forensics and incident response almost completely. They're complementary, but you can, in a way, in my opinion, have them be fairly specialized, because some of the skills that an incident responder might have might not necessarily be necessary, or how do I put this? Necessary is not a good word, but you might not be hard pressed to have the same skills, like in-depth skills as an incident responder, as a digital forensics specialist. But they're complementary. So basically, to answer your question, my recommendation usually is, just as I said, for the different areas of forensics, so mobile, computer, etc. Always strive to kind of like broaden your knowledge across these areas, so that you kind of like have an idea of like what's happening across the board. So as a digital forensics person, you also have to understand how incident response happens and some of the elements of incident response where like you would basically plug in your skills as well. Because sometimes something will come to you as a digital forensics expert that you might not necessarily have in-depth skills to do, but you have the ability to recognize what is going on and call someone in who has more skills than you to assist. I don't know if that kind of like clicks for you. So basically, what I'm trying to say is don't stretch yourself thin, because if you do that, then you're becoming an ineffective investigator. At the very least, just like know what's going on, like know the things that apply in your field.
Interruption. So,
And
sorry.
sorry, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, interruption. At time, the threat can come from internal. My staff is doing, for example, I'm a founder of a company as a
Yeah.
startup,
Yeah.
but
Yes.
the threat can come from internal. The employee himself can play the threat, whereby now that's where I'm thinking curiously to see the intersection of the digital forensics and the incident response. This person, I want to catch him in between now, the digital, this employee who is now an internal threat. I want to catch him in between the digital forensics and the incident response. When I catch him there, now I want to have, interview him. I should have better skills to interview him, better way to stop the attacks, better way to solve puzzles and restore things to normal. Should I chase him, that person, or if I immediately chase him, repercussion still goes bigger. So interviews helps a bit. Also, there where I'm looking, to be ahead of the curve with this person. That's intersection where I'm interested really. Sorry, thank you for interruption.
Oh, no worries. It's a good clarification. So then, I don't know whether you're in the session when I talked about the plane. Basically, things that happen before an incident, things that happen during an incident, and things that happen after an incident. So basically, what I'm hearing from you is there's also like an element of like trying to secure your company, because like as you've correctly said, insider threats exist. They are a big problem for many organizations. So then if I were you, I would be thinking, by the time you're thinking about forensics, you're already too late. You're supposed to be thinking about, you're supposed to have the ability to also preempt the kind of risks that your business would face or is facing and tackle them before the incident. So again, you're thinking about GRC people, you're thinking about maybe it's an application you've developed, you're thinking about pen testing, you try to preempt the risks and mitigate them. This is where now risk management is very key, because inside risk management you also handle internal threats, which are people. We can like go into this topic very, very deeper. But basically, I think about those risks as technology, processes, and people. So to your point, you're at the people bit. So you're supposed to at least preempt the kind of risks that would come from the inside or even outside, because people also includes third parties. So you preempt those types of risks right from the beginning, and now put processes in place and even technology to sort of help you catch them before they happen, or like at the very least be able to monitor your environment in a way that now you're already collecting evidence from the start. So let's say maybe an employee who works for you using company resources is using, let's say he's sitting at your office, he's using your laptop that you've given to him that is company property. He's using your internet to basically do personal work against company policy, right? You should have mitigations in place. For example, you should be able to, first of all, you should have the policies in place that they should sign and acknowledge that they have read and understood. you need to communicate those effectively. Then the next thing possibly that you would do is maybe have technology in place to monitor your environment. If you monitor your network and like everything that is going on in it, you might be able to catch some evidence from said employee who is violating company policy to sort of be able to point a finger that they are actually doing something that they're not supposed to be. Now you have that information. You have the basis now to start an investigation. You go in to do your digital forensics to now confirm. Once you do your investigation, you do your part of it is interviews, as you've said. So you do your investigation, you collect your evidence, and depending on what you find, now you take action as the organization. What that action is depends on what the offense was. Sometimes it's just disciplinary action. So as you said, chasing him away or like firing him, that could be the action that you want to take. But maybe the person has actually caused losses to the organization. Maybe they've stolen money. Maybe the company is a bank, right? And they've engaged in fraud. The business has lost money. Then the action you might want to do is pursue criminal charges. You see, but to get there, you need to actually do a proper forensic investigation. But even before you get to the investigation, there will be things that you will have done before. I hope I answer your question now better.
Yes.
Yeah, that's clear. And but here I asked something I got from your tongue. You said, what is the best software to monitor the office resources, including people, technology, and process? That's another question that came up, emerged from your explanation.
Okay, there are many. I wouldn't say there is any one that is best than another, because sometimes you can have a solution that people have termed as the best, but then it doesn't really work for you because internally you don't even have the skills to use that software properly. Because many times our failures don't even come from technology. Again, I'll take you back to technology, processes, and people. You could have the best technology and you could have solid processes documented. Everything is perfect. But then the people, that's where you fail. So here in this particular case, what I'm trying to bring out is the engineers, the analysts, maybe who you've tasked to use that solution that you've brought to your organization might not have in-depth skills to get the best out of it. So then still, the best is not really the best. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. But to answer your question, one of the popular solutions that companies use is a SIEM tool, Security Information and Event Management tool. So basically, you can tweak these sort of solutions to sort of monitor your network and even tell you, even monitor user behavior within your environment. One of those things could be, say your organization maybe typically operates on normal hours, 8 to 5, let's say. So that's when you expect to see network traffic within your organization. But one day or like frequently, you start seeing traffic outside of normal working hours, and it's very high traffic. You start asking yourselves questions like, where is this traffic from? What exactly is going on here? You drill into it. You find maybe someone has been using their credentials outside of office hours to log in and transfer company data outside of the network. See, so those are some of the scenarios that you can use a SIEM tool for, and there are many others. And also, you don't have to always like pay for these tools. There are a lot of open source tools that can help you achieve similar functions as commercial tools. So it's really just, you have to do a lot of research. You have to look at your organization, do your gap analysis, and figure out what might work best for your organization. Yeah.
And you said ASIMs or what? May you type on the chat, please? Thing you said ASIMs.
I'm just typing for you.
Event management.
I've just
thank
typed
you so
it
much.
for you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
There are more questions in line. So I think this one should go to Esther. You've talked a lot. Now
Yeah.
it's time for a break.
Yeah.
So, Esther, your question is from Anissa. She's asking, I see digital forensics is all about investigation. So does one has, okay, what does one have to have the knowledge of criminology? Is it a must to have that type of knowledge to be able to work in digital forensics?
No, it's not a must, but it would help you. It would be it would give you an edge, but no, it's not a must. Because again, you see, when you'll be learning digital forensics, you'd be learning all of these things from you'd be learning, say, something like mobile forensics. Yeah, and also I want you to note that sometimes not all forensics is to uncover a crime. There are different applications of digital forensics. If you do not like solving, if you do not like that side of solving crimes, you could go other sides. You could go into other areas. You could go into other areas that are like data recovery, just recovering data for people. Um, like there's East Africa. You could check East Africa data handlers. They do a lot of that. So maybe someone mistakenly deleted files in their machines, and then they need help retrieving. So no, you do not need. It's not compulsory to have criminology knowledge. I do not have myself. I do not have that, but it would give you an edge,
Yeah.
maybe. Yeah.
Okay, and can you just answer the follow-up question of what makes a good digital forensics report apart from being non-technical?
Do I take that?
Yeah. It's a
Okay.
follow-up. Raymond's need to relax.
Okay, so a good digital forensics report. Sometimes in your investigations, you might have two types of reports depending on your audience. Like if you're going to make reports, it depends on your audience. Yeah, number one, it depends on you. Who are you writing this report for? Is it for people with technical knowledge? Do they have what's their technical background like? If it's they do not have a lot of technical knowledge, then you're going to use very simple explanations, things that make sense. Yeah. And then the other thing, and if they are very technical, it might be very different. It will be of it not it might be it will actually be very different from a report that you're going to give to your CEO might not be the same report that you're going to give that your tech team is going to have. You might have to simplify things for the audience, for the other person who has technical little to no technical background. Again, the other thing that makes a good forensics report is the objective. Again, if you're going to do this will apply mostly if you're going to do a criminal case. If you're solving a crime, you need to be objective. Yeah. If you've been invited as an expert, your evidence needs to be admissible in a court of law. Okay. So your evidence needs to be neutral. It's not supposed to say, how do I put this? If you're not supposed to give evidence based on your expertise. Don't try to make the other person look bad or the other person look good, because that is not your work. Your work is to be neutral and be objective. The other thing that makes a very good digital forensics report is a structure. Like how have you arranged your work? What are you starting with? When I read your work, if I was not part of the investigation and I go through the report, if I have no knowledge, when I go through the report, can I understand? Can I move from the summary to the scope so that I know, oh, this is the scope of work, and also what was the purpose of this investigation? Is it to solve a crime? Is it to what else would it be? Is it to prove something? Yeah, to prove something that is not necessarily a crime. Then you also need in a good forensics report also has which methods did you use, which is very important. I used maybe which tools did you use, because sometimes you cannot, if you're doing a network forensics, the tools, remember we talked about the different forensic tools. There's some tools that we use in mobile forensics that will not apply in network forensics. So you're up you're putting down your methodology, yeah, your methods, then you go now to findings, then now you go to conclusions, and then you also have, you also explain things, the chain of custody, just just your clear structure, a clear structure. You need a clear structure, a clear organized things, a clear
Yep.
organized report. The other thing is accuracy. When you're doing a forensics report, you need to, at times, when you're doing the chain of custody, at this time, so say we are 3 investigators, we're working on the same piece of evidence. Now, remember we said you're going to make copies of this evidence, okay? So when we started, say at 9 a.m., 9:01 a.m., we collected the evidence. We made a copy at, say, 9:10 a.m. Then 9:10 a.m., Raymond did this and this on this, So just have timestamps, like time and date stamps, where everything is stored, where you've stored. Now, say this was stored in my machine. So where was it stored? What's the file path? Because if something goes wrong, if something is corrupted, at least you can go back. You can go back and you can retract your steps and know this is where it went wrong. Or, if you were not able to get results, if say the file was corrupted at this at this step, you can always go back to it. And then also your evidence should be, whatever you do when you're doing a report, I should be able to repeat this process with your like using your report as a guide and still get the same results. So a good forensics report has to be repeatable. I can repeat all of this process and I will not get different
Results.
results. Yes. And then the other thing and the most important thing is simplicity. Your audience, again, your audience. You want a report that is simple, that is easy to understand. You're a technical person, and that does not mean that the people you'll be speaking to will be very technical. So maybe provide, if you use very technical terms, have a section where you provide brief explanations of the technical terms that you use. If it's only you who can get the report, then the investigation is as good as nothing. Because as an investigator, your work is to make these things, you're interpreting, you're going through the steps of the attacker. You're walking backwards. A crime has happened. You're retelling the story backwards. Now if the attacker went from point A to point B, you're trying to walk backwards and show us that you moved from point B, it's moving from point B to point A. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah,
Sorry.
you may go on. Yeah, it's
Maybe
okay.
just
Go ahead.
to add on to what Esther has said, she's mentioned two very key points. One of them is repeatability. Because remember, if you're called to go and do an investigation, you need to do it in such a way that if another investigator is called upon to confirm your findings, they're able to kind of like follow the same steps and arrive at the same results as you. So repeatability, very, very important. Number two, objectivity. Don't write a forensic report with like you're not the judge, you're not the jury, you're not a lawyer. Your goal is to be objective. So basically, don't take anyone's side. Your job is to look at what has been presented to you and try and find evidence within it that is objective. And basically, when I say evidence, I'm saying that loosely with the idea that it could either be exculpatory or inculpatory. So exculpatory meaning that it basically kind of shows that the person who is being investigated is not guilty. Like, again, it's not your job, but evidence can be exculpatory or inculpatory. Inculpatory means now that it's confirming, like you found things that are confirming the person's guilt. So you should also strive to present both. If you find something that doesn't allude to the suspect's guilt, you should still say it. If you find something that alludes to their guilt, you should still say it. So maintain objectivity.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Raymond, for that clarity, because I also wanted to chip in on that perspective in terms of objectivity. Well, basically, as an investigator, you don't have to give your opinion. We don't care about your opinion. What's really important is the facts and what the evidence is saying. So, as a data forensics expert, you need to present the evidence, not your opinion. So, I just wanted to clarify or stress on that rather. Okay, so time is not on our hand, but let's just try and answer these two questions. So this one is for you, Raymond. Let
Okay.
Esther relax now.
Okay.
So it's from Claire. She's saying, as an investigator within this field, it seems like you can work in any case, like from phones, bank, just anything. So which case you worked with previously stood out for you that you can share with us, and how intense was it? So that's one. And then a follow-up question from her was, so this will go to Esther. She wants to know um, what programming language will you need if it's needed anyway. So that's for you, Esther. Okay, Raymond,
Mm. Okay.
your your
Claire,
case.
Claire, it's a very heavy question. Um, Usually, we're not like I'm not able to discuss case details,
Yeah,
like at least in a
public
revealing
setting.
manner. Yeah, but let me see. Uh, cases cases can span, like they can come from anywhere. Like actually, any industry you think of might have a forensic case. And let me tell you the beauty of consulting in different spaces is you also get to see how different industries work and how basically just like how they do their things. So again, it's very good experience. I've worked in like more than 15 different industries now. You've mentioned banking is one of them. Actually, I think your question kind of like combines different elements, but uh, banking is a big one. I've worked a lot in the NGO space. The other one, let's say, is big. Let's say manufacturing as well. So manufacturing, banking, the NGO space. So those three, typically, there's a lot of fraud happening. Um, Actually, add to that oil and gas. So oil and gas, manufacturing, banking or finance, and NGO. So usually there's a lot of fraud because there's a lot of money involved, right?
Mm,
And basically, those cases can be very intense in the sense that you also have to be very careful about like how you run the entire investigation, the kind of facts that you present because the stakes are high. For example, people tend to lose their jobs in fraud cases, and you can't just like dilly-dally and like not pay attention as you're running your investigation. You have to be very keen, very objective, pay attention to detail, because at the end of the day, either someone is going to be disciplined or there are going to be criminal charges. So that in itself makes the case like a little intense. There's a lot of pressure on you as an investigator. Now, kind of like jumping onto your other part of the question where you said like phones. So any cases from phones, banks. What I would say to this is you might not always know the kind of like evidence source you will be getting. So keep in mind, I've said oil and gas, manufacturing, the NGO space, and banking or finance. So I've been called to different investigations in these spaces, and while say predominantly the source of evidence might be say a laptop or a phone, it doesn't always end there. So sometimes you have to do email forensics. Sometimes you have to go into, say, a database server and like pull data from there. You also have to conduct interviews, which is what Isaac was saying earlier. You have a lot of complementary skills that at the end of the day kind of package. It's like a package uh, that allows you to do the investigation, complete the investigation like more effectively. Let's see if I answered the question. So, Mhm.
I think
Yeah,
you
I don't know.
did.
I don't know if I can answer. Yeah, I don't know if I can answer your question like very, very specifically, but generally, like I would say those four areas are the key ones that I find recurring. And with the case, you never know what you're getting. Like that's why I said, like, it's very important for you as an investigator to also know what kind of places you would be getting evidence. And this can even go further. Let me give you a practical example. When you have companies that use MacBooks are very notorious for like changing the way their systems work, even like security, like every now and then, like things get harder and harder as the years go by. So a tool that worked well for you, say in 2020 on a MacBook, might not work the same for a 2024 MacBook. So again, as an investigator, you also have to have the capacity to know what questions to ask as part of your request for information. If you're being called to investigate MacBooks, you know already like some of the challenges you might be facing on the ground, and that helps you also like prepare a little better. Like you need to know what questions to ask. So again, on the ground, that's intense on its own. Yeah.
I guess then Esther can give live examples if you
Yeah.
can't. I'm joking.
Yeah.
So, Esther, if you have, I don't know, maybe you've got some stories which you can share with Claire, I think. Yeah, with Claire. Maybe, if you can,
Okay, I have
then
two
it would be
stories.
great. Okay,
Maybe
great.
two stories. One I've read, one is I read about it and binged on it for long, but the other one actually happened at my old school. When I went to uni. It's not very interesting, but people used to change their marks. You'd say if towards graduation period, say if you had a D, you'd pay someone some money to get you an A or a B, like B for boy if you had a D for dog. So one time this happened, the way you'd pay your people would pay their lecturers. It was actually a business. It was a whole thing. So if I know, you always know a guy. You needed to know a guy who knows a guy. So say I know Raymond who knows a lecturer. So I talk to Raymond, I pay Raymond some money, and I also pay him to pay the lecturer to get my mark from the D to an A. So one time they did an investigation towards graduation time, like when the business it was at its peak. So they did an investigation. They got forensics investigators and they did an investigation. And they I didn't participate in this investigation, but one issue that happened was that they got everyone that had their marks entered between a certain period, like a certain date, they were disqualified, even if they were rightfully entered. They were disqualified. So you had to go with proof. So now it's towards graduation time, and everyone is trying to hustle to get that mark there and to get to graduate. Yeah. The other one is how to not kill your husband, how to not murder your husband. A lady wrote a book. A lady wrote a novel, How to Murder Your Husband. She was later found guilty. I think 2 years later. They were a very old couple, 72 years. I mean, 70, if you're 72, you're that old with someone. And then she murdered her husband at work and then drove away. And what actually got the investigators to know what made her guilty, her browser history. So they saw she had Googled where to get a gun. It was a Glock. I don't remember the exact. Sorry, I'm not so good with weapons. But she had ordered a Glock earlier. She had ordered it on Amazon. So yeah, it was shipped to her, and that was the thing that was the thing that led investigators to know that she, like, it made her guilty. That was it. The other interesting case. Ray talked a bit about Apple products, MacBooks. How they invest so much in their security, and how it's hard to investigate. Sometimes it's hard to investigate to get these tools. In 2014? Now, this is also another story. It was a San Bernardino case, a San Bernardino story. There was a shootout. The way in the US, there's usually mass shootouts. Someone just goes mad and decides to shoot at people. So yeah, there were two people. There were two criminals. They shot people there was a celebration going on. And then when the police came, the police were shooting, and then these two people died. Now, a phone was retrieved. It was an iPhone. An iPhone was retrieved there. It belonged to one of the criminals. FBI could not. Now, when this piece of evidence. This is evidence. A phone has been collected. That is evidence. So when it was taken to FBI, they could not investigate. They did not have tools. I want you to note that this is FBI we are talking about, and they do not have the tools necessary to investigate an iPhone. Yeah. So they went to iPhone, they went to now Apple, and then told them, so guys, we need you guys to help us monitor people's phones. So they wanted Apple to invent a government OS, like the iOS, but now it has a backdoor that allows the government to spy on its people. It was a big case. It's very important. It was very important because now it brought in the issues of data privacy. So it brought in the question of when it's a matter of security, does an organization like Apple have to compromise on privacy to ensure security? It was a whole story, but Apple refused to do that. Yeah, so it's one of the stories that have slowly shaped this industry. Yeah, you can read about them. Actually, you can just Google cases, read about them, see the tools, things that were used. Yeah, tools that were used in these stories, in these cases. Yeah, just how to think like a criminal. It will also help you bring into perspective digital forensics as a field or as a career. Yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, yeah, you may go on.
Okay, yeah, maybe I've just thought of one war story I think I can share.
Okay.
This one is from the NGO space, as I mentioned earlier. So this was 2018 or 2019. There was a high-level executive in the NGO in Nairobi who had been apparently misappropriating. He had been misappropriating company assets. So one of the things that he got as part of his role was a car, like a company car. So essentially, there were two allegations against him. One of them was HR based. So basically, it was said that he was hiring, his family and friends. But the other one, the other thing was he's misappropriating company assets. So he denied, just to focus on the example of the vehicle. So he denied completely that he had never done it. He said he'd only been using the car for official travel, but the company insists, like already there's been a whistleblower who has said this person uses this car for personal reasons. So what ended up happening is I don't know if he underestimated like how accurate GPS records can be, or if he didn't know the vehicle had a tracker, but we basically had to do an analysis of all the GPS locations he had, traveled to in a span of I think it was like a whole year. So asked him questions, like he said, okay, so there are allegations. We put questions to him, ask him where, his whereabouts at certain times. He says he'd gone for work. We have to go back to also talk to the organization and see, was there really a work-related function at this time? And then kind of look at the GPS records and see what exactly they tell us about those particular dates. Come back to him again, ask questions. So there's a lot of back and forth. He kept denying, and we kept reviewing the GPS log. So basically, it's like you tell me one thing, and I take it, but then I have to now go as part of my investigation to confirm what you're telling me. So you tell me you were in Kisumu at this such and such a time. I go into the GPS records and confirm it, and still confirm with the organization what was happening at the time that was work related. We even had to go down into for example, he was not supposed to take the vehicle at home. He denied ever doing that. Again, went into the GPS records. Very, very, very not necessarily easy. It's like a lot of analysis. Went into the GPS records, plotted. It's like you can chart in the vehicle. So we even went as far as finding out that this particular executive was like taking the vehicle to his house when he wasn't supposed to be doing that. So put all this stuff down, then followed up with him with questions again. Yeah, and like a criminal will always try to lie to you until you find them out, and then it's like they're shaking in their boots. And this was very interesting to me at the time because this is like someone who is much older. You would think that they would lie better. So so we basically just like found him out, found he was confirmed rather he was misusing the company's vehicle, presented our findings, and the organization took discipline. Uh, because why would you, if you're supposed to be finishing uh, work, you leave work, say at 5, but then the vehicle is found to be at your house, your compound at like 9 p.m. And the beauty of GPS records, specifically the ones from trackers, they can even show you when a car's ignition was started, when the car ignition was off, how fast you are going, when the car was stopped, like how much fuel you have. So it was like a combination of many things, very intense analysis. And what we ended up having to do is help the organization also quantify how much loss they have incurred from the executive doing that. So basically, that entire period, look at all the times when he misused the company asset, and then present those findings to the organization. And they had sort of like a schedule of reimbursement. So I think they were charging it per kilometer. So, for example, if you take this car for personal use, if you drive 20 kilometers, for example, you pay us 150 shillings per kilometer. So he'd driven quite a bit. We found all the times he'd misused the asset, and the company translated that into money that he was supposed to pay them. And from there, with the other allegations as well, they kind of decided to take disciplinary action, and the guy was fired. So this is why I was saying that you need to be very careful as an investigator, because your work will have real world consequences. You can't just
Exactly.
take it lightly. Yeah,
Mm.
that's it.
Okay. Thank you very much for great stories. And, it was a great session today. So let's just end our session here. But before we go, I'd like to ask the both of you one last question. And we've talked about a lot of things, chain of custody, we've talked about the investigation process, etc. But we haven't touched base in certifications. So can
Mm.
you, a little bit touch base on that? How important are they, especially as a practitioner, and what role do they play whenever you're going to either becoming an expert witness or just your investigative process? So I'd like to get your opinion, Raymond, and then we'll go to Esther, and then I'll do a little bit of a summary of some things which we were supposed to touch base on, but we didn't due to time constraints, and then we'll end our session there. I think it will be something for them to go and take it at a personal level, learning process. So yeah, back to you, Raymond.
Okay, thank you, Karim. My my opinion on certifications is always very controversial. Um, what I'll say about that is, actually, I don't know if you can see back there. I only have
Yeah.
one, and it's not even forensics. It's I'm a certified fraud examiner. Something to do with forensics is going to come later, and it's not just like specifically forensics. I'm thinking about something that is more, let's call it all-encompassing, right, of the areas that I want to focus on. That said, um, my take on certifications is that they are good, but you shouldn't always just like rush to get certification, right? Remember, they cost money. You have to be very strategic with the kind of certifications you pick and that you choose to do. You have to think about your goals and where you want to basically take your career. Maybe you want to go into incident response and like you want to showcase yourself as like a certified incident responder. Maybe you then would go and find one that is uh, globally recognized, that is, very good for incident response. Unfortunately, we live in a society where people emphasize a lot more on certifications than practical skills. And that's, I think, where as an industry, we tend to like have dropped the ball. So you find, you guys must have seen it. Like we see all the time, HR people slapping certifications that are required for a role that require, like that one that I've shown you that I have, requires you to have 5 years of working experience, right? So if you're applying to a role that is entry level, there's no reason for you to be required to have a certification that needs you to have 5 years of experience. You see, the CISSPs and the likes, like all those big certifications we keep hearing about and seeing in job descriptions. So unfortunately, that's the world we live in. If that is the case, like again, you want to do a certification, just be very strategic about the ones that you choose. We have a lot of certifications for forensics. Some are very expensive. I think the ones by SANS are known to be some of the pricier ones. I don't know if you guys are familiar with SANS, SANS. They have certifications that cost you like upwards of 200,000. You see. And you see, if you're trying to like do all the certifications, it becomes very expensive. Now, remember that is only getting it. You also have to maintain it. That again is like money. You have to be part of the organization. You have to do continuous professional education. All of this costs money. So if you have someone who has expensive certifications that they've collected, like they have like 5 or 10, it becomes very hectic. So again, be very strategic about the ones that you choose to do. Think about where you want to go as in your career. If it's digital forensics, sometimes you can even get away with, I think we're starting to at least have a lot of employers and organizations that are looking more at the skills and experience that you have as opposed to certifications. So with that said, you can also explore a lot of these, let's say free to more affordable training that you can just kind of like go through. For example, autopsy, which is a very well known, very well respected
Yeah.
forensic analysis tool, has had, I think probably you can still find it online. They have training, like hands-on training that you can go through to just like learn how to do a forensic analysis, right, using autopsy. So you do find a lot of trainings like that. You'll get certificates, you'll get hands-on skills. Then like later down the line, think about what you want to, if you want to get like a bigger, like a weightier certification. No one will stop you. Just like I urge you to just like go and do your own research of uh, place you want to end up, like because there are so many certifications. I'm happy to provide uh, let's say specific guidance based on what you will go out there and like find, and like if you come and ask me, rather if you come and tell me like you want to be you want to end up in a certain role, you've looked at certifications, you've looked at A, B, C, D certifications, like which ones do I think might work better for you? I'll be happy to give you my thoughts and opinions. But I'm not going to tell you today, go and do like a particular forensic certification because I think it's better for a particular role or a particular path. So right now, I think a lot of us are probably in the space where we're still testing the waters. Actually, probably you can take a long time trying to figure out where, like, what part of the, forensics, digital forensics, incident response space makes you tick. Like you're trying to still find your fit. So
Yeah.
keep testing the water for you. Then after that, after you've settled somewhere, then now try to get a certification to just kind of like ascertain your skills. I hope
Okay,
that
thank you very
answers
much.
the question.
Yes, definitely. Esther, would like to get your opinion on certifications. Yeah.
Now, here's what I think. When you're starting out, it's not important. Would be helpful, but say right now you're in this boot camp, and maybe one, say CHFI is a very common certification. It's a very, I think it's for starters. Yeah, but it's very
Yeah.
expensive. So for a start, it's not essential for you. However, while you're building, just as Ray has said, you need to be strategic with the things that with the certifications that you want. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then now as you're starting now, I think it's important you'll need to prove your skills to an employer, obviously. So do so many projects, do so many. Belkasoft has a lot of other free courses, including plus the one that Raymond has mentioned. So do as many projects as you can, because at the end of the day, it's your skills that matter. You might have all of those certifications, but if you get you a case to investigate, then there's nothing. Again, depends on where you're going. Where do you want to specialize? Because for example, if you're going to be working on criminal cases, you're going to be if you're working on legal cases, you're going to be you're going to be an expert witness. Yeah. So at that time, for such cases, courts will ask for your qualifications when you're testifying. Yeah. Yeah, so depends on where you want to go. Look where you want to go, then strategize. But in the meantime, do projects. Yeah, get the employment. Then other employers are good. They might even help you to pay for some of these certifications. At least it helps to validate your skill and have your resume stand out. Yeah, that's what I think. But as you're starting, please don't stress so much about them. Get the skills.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Esther, before you go, um, give us your last, let me say, opinion, or okay, let me say closing remarks. I think that would be the best statement. So, give us your closing remarks, and then Raymond, you'll do the same, your closing remarks, and then I'll just do a wrap up, and then we'll call it a day. Because I must say, you guys have broken the record today. Since you started the bootcamp, we haven't had a long session like for this one. So thank you to the both of you. But yeah, Esther, your closing remarks.
My closing remarks. Getting into cybersecurity, it will be sometimes it will be challenging, but it's also fun. If you're curious, if you know your why, just keep coming to your why. Every time, just keep coming to your why. And also the other thing is, don't be fixated on one thing. You might start off as a forensics person, but you end up in a whole different field. Just be fluid, just be open to learning, and then you will constantly need to learn. And then also this field, the other thing I would tell you is get your brand out there. Get your brand out there. Most of these jobs, they're not advertised. I swear they're not advertised. You know a guy who knows a guy, and then
Exactly.
the more you speak you're your own brand. And then also you're a personal brand. So you are your own PR manager, you're your own knowledge manager. Because even after this boot camp, you might apply for a job, you might apply for an internship and get it. But then what? That's this knowledge is not going to be enough like sufficient to take you through, say, 10 years of your career. So be open to learning. Put yourself out there, do as many projects. Let me tell you guys from personal experience, I have got where I am at now, my workplace, I've gotten it because of projects. And then it's not even a big project. It's an article I wrote about a service that the company provides. So it's usually just that, that one thing that you did. Go out, think outside the box. Don't just if you do investigations, read stories. When you read these stories, talk about them. Let us know that you are skilled in this and you can do this, or show us something that you did. Most importantly, when you'll be doing those posts, what did you do? How did you do it? Show how can you use this tool? How did you use it? Yeah, and always ask questions. Don't feel stupid. Um don't feel don't feel scared
Inferior.
to ask questions. Yes, no one knows everything. I do not know everything. I ask Raymond
Exactly.
a lot of questions. So please always keep asking these questions. Don't be scared. Another thing, join communities. Please, please,
Exactly.
please join communities. That's why I got to meet Raymond in a community. I learn a lot in that community, different communities. And then some jobs that just posted in the communities. You might not get them, but at least you always learn a thing or two. Yeah, because also the other thing you will learn about security, it's neat. It's closely knit, by the way. The person like X knows Y knows Z. So just try and get yourself out there. Other than that, you're in good hands. Do your part, and the rest will flow. Just show up. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Esther, for great closing remarks. Also, just a heads up to everybody, Raymond's session is already up. So feel free to go and have a look, and then I'll upload this live session later on so that we can all be on the same page and I wouldn't have any debt to you guys. So, Raymond, you're up next. Your closing remarks.
All right. Thank you, Karim. I would start off by saying keep learning. As Esther mentioned, no one knows everything. So be curious and build a habit of learning, build a culture of learning. Practice as much as you can. There are so many. Actually, I think we are one of the luckier industries because anything you need, you can probably find online now. You can literally think about any specialized area you would like to go into, and there will be information and resources to help you, just learn online. So get in the habit of learning. Also get in the habit of blowing your own trumpet. I think this is this is something that tech people typically struggle with. Maybe it has to do with like communication or the like, but get in the habit of like showcasing what you're doing, what you've done, blow your own trumpet,
Yeah.
work on your CV, highlight the projects you've done. If you have a blog, write about the things you're doing, write tutorials, write guides, because these are some of the things that some progressive employers actually look at. Just kind of like take it as like a demonstration of you actually understanding the material of the area that you're going into. Social media as well, places like LinkedIn, write posts on LinkedIn. I think they have you can write articles on there. Just highlight some of some of the stuff you're doing on your socials as well. The third thing, network. Like I cannot express how important networking is, and Esther has kind of like mentioned this. Network, put yourself out there, go to events, join communities, like meet people from different backgrounds with different levels of experience, and also get to learn from them. Someone might say something that will like spark your curiosity in a way that you didn't even think about in the first place. So networking is really big. And finally, get a mentor if you can. And me saying that you should get a mentor, I'm also very I'm very particular about this. Actually, a lot of mentors will tell you that they're not really there to spoon feed you. Like getting a mentor doesn't mean that you're not doing any work. You're just being told what to do. You need to you need to be able to demonstrate what you've done actively and what you're actively working on, and then where there are gaps, ask your mentor to guide you. That's why I said before, if you're going to come and ask me about certifications, tell me what you've looked at, tell me what you're thinking about your goals, and then I'll tell you, I'll give you my thoughts, right? Keep planning, blow your own trumpets, out there and network and get a mentor. Those are the comments I would make to close. And thank you, Karim, for this.
Thank you very much, Raymond, for your wonderful closing remarks. So I also wanted to mention that there are some things which we didn't cover due to time constraints. And this is the aspects before the chain of custody. Raymond initially mentioned that if you don't maintain a proper chain of custody, you're going to jeopardize the whole case. But there are also other things prior the chain of custody, which if you do, definitely are gonna, jeopardize the whole case. So let me just highlight them very quickly. So number one is before doing any investigation, you need to first of all get to the organization, and then once you're there, you need to understand the scope and the requirement of the job that you're pursuing. Once you're done with that, you need to get authorizations. Same way we are doing penetration testing and vulnerability assessment to get authorizations, then definitely here you need to get authorizations. Once you get gotten the authorization, you need to look at the government policies, because the problem of digital forensics, it's not governed by just one rule. It's governed by a nexus of rules, like for example, human right law, right, Computer Misuse Act, etc. So there are all these laws which govern digital forensics. If you breach one, the whole case has gone to jeopardy. So you need to understand the organization policies. What does it say? Did the employee sign to be investigated in the first place if an issue occurs? If it doesn't, then you'll be breaching the Human Rights Act law, which is going to anyway jeopardize the whole investigation. So there's that. And then you need to prepare your tools and prepare yourself mentally for the role. Then after that, you're going to become a fast responder. And then you need to identify the evidence, you need to tag them, and then you need to take pictures. While you're doing all this, you need to not tamper with the evidence. One of the ways is leaving your fingerprints. So definitely you need to wear gloves. So the same way the other guys in the forensic science, the way they are doing it, when they get to the crime scene, they wear gloves, they do this and that, they tag the, where the body died, etc. The evidence is the same way you will do in the digital forensic space, more or less the same, right? So once you've done that, you take pictures of the crime scene, and then from there you start working with the laws. But also, I wanted to ask this as a question, but the time has already gone. But you need also to have something called contemporaneous notes, where everything that you do, you write it down. Like for example, I got to the crime scene at 12:45. At 12:50, this is what I did. At 12:55, this is what I did. So these are just rough notes that you're supposed to have before actually, not before, while you're doing everything. You need to take the time and explain what you are doing. So these are just your rough notes, which also are going to be part of your chain of custody. And then finally, you end with the chain of custody from there, to take the evidence to the forensics lab. And then finally, which I think, I don't know if I missed it, but we didn't discuss about type of forensics. So there's the live and dead forensics. Um, and it would have been great if we had discussed this, but once again, time constraints and things like that. But generally, those are some of the things that you guys need to go and do a little bit more research on. and learn on your own and gain more knowledge. Raymond, if it will be okay, can you please just drop in your LinkedIn user so that if they have any questions, they can ping you and ask you on the side. But on my side, and finally, there's the bit of the expert witness. So yeah, that's also one bit which we didn't discuss, but once again, time constraints. So Raymond has already dropped his LinkedIn account, so feel free to ping him anytime and he'll answer your questions to the best of your knowledge. But let me just say thank you very much, Raymond, for your time. I know it's been, within short notice, a marathon.
Yeah. And actually, maybe even before we go,
Okay.
just because you mentioned contemporaneous notes, and I wanted to drop another nugget on that.
Awesome.
You've correctly said, what they are. It's just basically like notes you probably take on the ground, like rough notes. But then, what typically might happen, like I guess as an investigator, you also have to be aware of subpoena to provide, right? So sometimes as part of the investigation, if you're going to take contemporaneous notes, you have to be careful about what you're putting in it, right? Because always keep in mind that your notes can also be subpoenaed for legal proceedings. So if there's something sensitive, if there's something that should not be seen outside of the investigating team, you don't put it in your notes, or like you put it in a way that you're the only one who understands what exactly it is you've written down. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much for the highlights. I remember when I was doing my master's thesis, I was penalized for not writing all the laws which I followed for governing the digital forensics. My instructor was very strict with that. But anyway, a story for another time. But Raymond, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it. The efforts that you have put here with Esther. And we just want to say thank you very much. And on behalf of, let me say, the mentees, probably we're going to have you next time. I don't know. Probably in the closing ceremony. I don't know. We'll be happy to have you. But generally, thank you very much.
Yeah, but yeah.
You go on?
All right, you're welcome.
Okay, awesome. So, guys, once again, we're already done with this session. Thank you very much. As usual, we are going to meet your labs and assignment pretty soon. So be aware of that. Once again, Mr. Raymond's session will be up in a few minutes. Oh, okay, sorry, it's already up. It's already up on YouTube, so you can go and also do a follow-up on that to get more insights and to get a little bit a different perspective from Esther in a more in-depth perspective. So I guess we are done for the day, and see you guys in the next session. Raymond, we'll keep in touch. Thank you very much, and cheers.